Did you get a message?
No, I did not.
Okay, so I guess we're good. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm Annie Spade and I'm co-stewarding this room, Whole Self-Nurturing and Healing Justice, here with Tex Albert. And I'm in Austin, Texas. He's in Quebec. And we have Viola, who's kind of become a co-steward with us. She's in Oregon. And we welcome Nola. Yeah, let's see, Viola, do you want to mute yourself unless you wanted to say something before we start? There we go, perfect. All right, well, I'm just so tickled to be able to put this out there, and thank you all for being here. I was exposed to this now about 7 years ago, and it's really become an integral part of my life in the way that I think about orienting to life, because actually the integralists tell us that when the Big Bang happened, that's when time and space began, and time is meant to orient us to life, in life, and space is meant to ground us. So we'll be really working with both in some sense, because we'll be conceiving of time in a way that I had certainly never considered before I was exposed to this wisdom. So we know that time, we typically track it with something called a calendar and a clock. And I'm going to put a little visual up for you. Let me get the right one to remind us kind of where we are. So this is how we think of time right now, right? Time serves industry. Time is money. It serves our authorities. This was conceived of, we know our calendar now as the Gregorian Calendar, which refers to Pope Gregory. Back in the early centuries of Christianity, he converted the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, and both of which were not related to any particular cycles, really had more to do with who are we honoring by which month. We know like July is named for Julian, and the various months have those kinds of connection to a particular religious or political authority of that time. And then we know, we do know, because it's the way that we keep up with these arbitrary months, you know, 30 days has September, April, June, and November. I mean, we all play that little poem in our minds to try to keep up with this very oddball calendar that we deal with. And we think of the numbers associated with both the clock and the calendar. It's the number 12, right? 12 months, 12 hours, and the number 60 with the minutes. So we could say it's a 1260 setup, undergirding as far as numbers go. And we'll be talking about numbers a fair amount here in just a minute. And then have a little quote over here from the understanding of what this has been doing for us to be working with this truly arbitrary system of tracking time. When a person, culture, or civilization has every minute of their life determined by clock time, their instincts, intuition, telepathy, and synchronicity will atrophy. And I think we can readily agree that we don't value those much, or if we do feel that we do value them, we have no idea how to retrieve them. And the truth is that we're working against our cosmic consciousness that should be the natural order and the natural way of orienting ourselves in time. Because it is natural to live in rhythms. I mean, we recognize that, the rhythms of the seasons. And when we think about rhythms, what other rhythms, if we didn't have clocks and calendars, as we didn't have the Gregorian calendar, we didn't have clocks, how else would we track time? I'm gonna play teacher here if anybody wants to. Yes. Unmute yourself, please.
Well, by the good old sun.
By the sun. Yeah, what kind of?
By our shadow. Midday, the sun was above, especially when we were in Seychelles near to the equator. At midday, the sun's right above.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So you have a sense of when the sun rose to the point where the sun is directly overhead with the way your shadow is. And we know the sundial was certainly an early way to be a little more accurate, perhaps, with that. But any kind of demarcations in that would be purely arbitrary, right? Because the sun is a flow, you know, because the sun is a flow because actually the earth is turning, you know. The sun doesn't actually rise and set. We just turn. The orb is perpetually turning. So there's truly no beginning, no end. And what else? What else would track our time? What else would orient us? We have another orb out there that, or even more, but there's another really prominent one that we might notice.
Well, in Seychelles, especially, we would be awakened by the cock crowing. No, but it's true. It gave a sense of time. I'm telling you from my experience, you know. So that was a sense of time, you know, the cock crowing, the birds singing. So, you know, like the sun's about to rise.
Yes, the dawn song. In fact, every bird has a different dawn song from the mating song, actually. So it's a very particular sound. Viola.
Well, the moon, you know, the ebb and flow and the tides, and that affects everything, the season.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Someone said it yesterday and I was cheering. You know, if the moon can affect the tides, imagine what it's doing for us. You know, what effect it's having on us, not just in terms of seeing where it is and what's going on with its phases, but it's actually having its way with us, you know, as we go along, and it's circling the earth as we're circling the sun, and we're turning, and all of this cycling. Well, the stars also cycle, and we'll be also looking at the ways that the ancient ones, we know they saw the stars much more prominently than we do, and watched them and noticed when particular stars would set for the year, and then they would return at a different time of the year, and that was something else they were tracking. But certainly the lunar cycle and the solar cycle, actually it's our cycle around the sun, and the seasons, the solstice. We know Stonehenge and so many other places on the planet that the ancients prepared the space so that certain day of the year, on the solstice, typically, that's when you would have the beam of light tracking straight across the temple. So all of this cyclical nature of our orbs was very sacred. And this we should claim as natural time. What we've been doing, what we've all grown up with, is artificial time. And so natural time is something that is a gift of the ancient ones. It goes even deeper than the lunar cycles. There are cycles, as I say, in the stars. So the brightest star in the sky is Sirius, which is the dog star, the major dog. It's in the major dog constellation of Orion. And it is the brightest star in the sky, and it's seen in both the northern and southern hemispheres. And Sirius is about 8 light years away. And it is a true double star. So we've been able to now observe it and note that it has a 52-year rotation of the double star. There's also a 26,000 year, just kind of blowing that way up, 26,000 year precession of the constellations in the Milky Way. And prominent there is the Pleiades, which we know them as the seven sisters, the seven stars that are visible with the naked eye. Pleiades actually is a collection of hundreds of stars when you get a telescope onto it. But this was actually the constellation that figured prominently in the galactic wisdom that we're going to break open today. And so it's the 26,000 year cycle of the Pleiades reaching a particular point, which is a kind of end point in the elliptical rotation of the constellations of our Milky Way. So no one can observe 26,000 years. So how do we get all this wisdom? Well, what happened, I get to tell you an amazing story. It's not without tragedy, because when the friars came over from Spain and encountered the Mayan civilization in the Yucatan Peninsula area of the world of Central America, the Mayans had manuscripts, scores and scores and scores of manuscripts that they had created using bark paper. And at first the friars were, kind of trying to put it on. And then pretty soon they decided, no, this was pagan. This was, earth worship, whatever. And they made the Mayans burn all of their manuscripts, except 4 survived. They're in the British Museum, but they actually don't have any particular information that helps with what I'll be sharing with you today. It's interesting to me, of note to me, that the asteroid that hit the Earth 65 million years ago and was the cause of the fall of the great age of reptiles, the dinosaurs, and began the rise of the mammalian order, fell in the Gulf of Mexico in the Yucatan area. So I think that this area clearly is the area for entry point for cosmic wisdom. So what happened is that in 1949, they were down excavating in that area and a particular temple, and they discovered something called a telectanon. And this is an earth speaking tube. They call it that because they realized that this tube was coming up in the temple and down the staircase, down by the side of the staircase and into the ground, and in fact connected to a tomb under the ground. So this was 49, and they began to carefully excavate to find where this telectanon led. And in 1952, on the 15th of June, they uncovered, they opened the tomb of Pakal Votan, a person now known as Pakal Votan, who was a shaman, a leader. We now also refer to him as Lord Pakal. And when they opened the tomb, they found a sarcophagus with mummified remains. I'm going to show you a photo or a sketch of what they found. So this might even be familiar to you. I almost feel like I had seen it before somewhere, but I had no idea what it was. So this is the sarcophagus lid to Lord Pakal's tomb, sarcophagus, and it was just covered outside and inside with these inscriptions, which of course no one had any idea of what the meaning of these symbols were. And furthermore, inside, as I say, was the mummified remains of Lord Pakal, and he had rings on all fingers and toes, and was just exquisitely buried there, interred there. And the very next year, 1953, Jose Arguelles was a 14-year-old, and he was meditating on the mount of the Temple of the Sun nearby, and he received a kind of transmission about this, and ended up visiting Palenque, where the tomb was, and he knew that he was meant to be the one to open up the wisdom. He was only 14 years old at that time, and it was to be quite a lifelong journey before he reached that point, because the wisdom was just so much more than perhaps even, you know, uncovering the language of the Egyptians or the Phoenicians or any other ancient language. I'll get to that in just a moment. I want to just make a note that 34 years later, many people know Jose Arguelles through something called see, what was that called? The harmonic convergence. The harmonic convergence of August of 1987. Yeah, Viola, do you remember anything about that? Have you heard about that? The harmonic convergence, yes? So he had a, meditation clearly was a major part of his practice in his life throughout. And he had the sense that if enough people meditated together, that there would be some kind of shift in the energy on the planet. And so indeed, thousands of people did meditate. And I didn't think to look this up ahead of time to quote it to you, but there was in fact a significant change in the number of, I believe, murders worldwide that was noted in the papers. It was quite striking. And so Jose Arguelles is known for that. But still at this point, he was studying these inscriptions and reflecting and taking it to his meditation, but still no breakthrough had happened until 1993 on the 26th of July, which we'll be getting back to the 26th of July and what significance that has in just a moment. I should probably tell you this now. Yeah, I'll tell you this now because, so the 26th of July is I'll tell you this much, that this is the day on which Sirius, we've talked about Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, this is when it returns to the northern hemisphere, that area where the Mayan people lived. So, every different place would have a different time that Sirius would arise. But the 26th of July is when it returns to that area of the world after being in the southern hemisphere, visible for some months. And what came to him at that moment in meditation on that day in 1993. Now we're now 41 years after the opening of the tomb, and this was the transmission. Telektanon, the speaking tube, is transmitting. It's just referring to what it's transmitting. Is no word at all, but number multiplying itself from within God's unending meditation that we choose to call creation. I'll repeat that. Telektanon is no word at all, but number multiplying itself from within God's unending meditation that we choose to call creation. So have you all seen the film Contact?
Yeah.
With Jodie Foster? So you remember that she's working with SETI, which is where they're studying for extraterrestrial vibration in space, and she's got this whole array, and so something starts coming through, and it's numbers. Remember it's prime numbers. It starts over. It's in the middle when she first comes in, and she's hearing it. They're picking it up on the monitors, and then it starts over, and she realizes, oh, it's going prime numbers, 2, 3, 7, like that, 11, and it's immediately recognized that numbers are the universal language. So very fascinating to recognize that having, we kind of think of that in a negative way. I was thinking about that, like, we don't want to be known as a number. There's been that kind of stigma to that. And yet there's a real beauty in numbers, order in the universe. It's very reflected in geometry. I'm going to pull my seed of life. There's reflective of that sacred geometry. So this was 1993 that he received this transmission that creation is indeed number multiplying itself in the intention of God. And the very next year, a companion tomb was uncovered at Palenque. This time, there were no inscriptions. When they opened it up, red cinnabar powder just was covering the tomb and all inside of it. And it was a woman inside the tomb. And it was determined that she was indeed companion to Lord Pakal's tomb, and she is known as the Red Queen because of the cinnabar. And so she was uncovered the 1st of June in 1994. After that happened, really seemed to open the door, and this was when, oh my goodness, this was when he began, yes, so to receive some more transmissions about it, and ultimately 8 years later, he was honored by 9 indigenous elders, Jose Arguelles, and recognized as closer of the cycle is what they gave him the name, closer of the cycle, on the 3rd of March in 2002. Interesting Texas birthday. And 9 days later, strong transmission began, where he went into meditation with Stephanie South, and they took on the dynamic of Pakal Votan and the Red Queen together, and adopted a discipline of 260 consecutive days of fasting and practice and prayer, and channeled the original galactic wisdom, because that's what he had come to recognize over these ensuing years, that this is what was trying to transmit in, and it was going to take some really really intentional work to bring the galactic Mayan lineage back and reestablish it. So this is where Jose Arguelles' work is where we come to understand that it was the end of a cycle, 5,125 year cycle, which is a 5th of that 26,000 year cycle that I talked about with the Pleiades. And that's what, when everyone was talking about the end of the Mayan calendar, it was the end of this large Baktun. And that happened on solstice, winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere in 2012. And that actually has a reference to Teilhard, which I'll get into in a moment when I explain a bit more about the Mayan wisdom. Jose Arguelles actually passed away the year before, so he did not live until that moment. But by passing away in 2011, it was 1,328 years after Pakal Votan, and you'll see how that number relates to all of this as we go into it. So what did he and Stephanie South bring up? Let's go in. First of all, I'll just give you this because we've already talked about it. So here's our 52-year cycle of the of Sirius. We spoke about the double star. We also see that our sun, it's 365.25 days that it takes for the Earth to make one cycle around the sun. And then we've got the 26,000 year cycle of the Pleiades. If you take 365 days and divide it into 13 equal parts, let's see, take this down. You get 13 months or moons of 28 days each. I probably should have kept that one up for a minute. Let me get back to that. Well, let me just refer back to that so that the menstrual cycle, you can see how the menstrual cycle relates to that, and that this is actually the lunar cycle. The lunar cycle, if you go and it's not exact, and it's going to be between 27 to point something to 28 point something, depending each time. So the lunar cycle works out as a average of 28 days. And so when you divide 365 by 13, you get 28-day cycles of 13 28-day cycles with 1 day left over, which we call the day out of time. And so the way that the synchronicity, the order goes, we use that day when Sirius rises in the Yucatan, which is July 26th as we know it. And that's the beginning of the new cycle of 13 28-day moons is how we refer to it, not as months, but as moons. And we can see how this is the encoded natural order to have 13 moons of 28 days with 1 day left over. And I can clarify too about the February 29th coming up every 4th year to reset the pattern. So what happens is when you as I say, they recognize somehow this 260-day period that Jose Arguelles and Stephanie South took on. That was the end of the transmission. And so they understood through that what was transmitted to them over those 260 days, that it is a 260-day pattern that repeats through the year. And so it's off by 105 days from the solar, right? But 260 is a fractal of that 26,000 year precession of the Pleiades. It's also a fractal of 13, and it also relates to the human gestational cycle, 260 days. So what happens is when you have a 260-day cycle going along, and of course it's the next year that precession of days falls on a different day in a solar year of 365, but after 52 years they will sync up again. So let me give you a little picture. Let me make sure. Yeah, this is something that I used as a visual aid in person, so it's a little difficult to go back and forth here. But let me give you this. So it's a little bit blurry. You want to pick up the pattern that's on this. This is the matrix of the 260 days. And as I say, this pattern just is a continual repeating pattern, doesn't pause. What you see down on the left side is 20 seals, we call them. So there's, they came to understand a bit of the energy in terms, or the kind of energy for each one of these relating to possibly like an animal or something in nature. So we have the wind and the night, like day and night, like the nighttime, the seed, the serpent, the world bridger, like death to life, the eagle, the star, just kind of goes down the left side. There are 20 of them. And then across it's 13 13 kind of energetic patterns, which we call, just slipped my mind there, tones, the 13 tones. Yes, Tex, you need to unmute.
You may have been referring to a slide that you did not actually share.
That wasn't up there. Okay, let me try.
It was a previous one. So
okay, thank you. Let me pull this one.
Maybe you were checking if we watched.
Yeah, let me make sure. Yeah, I took everything else down. So hopefully, do you see this matrix now? What are you seeing now? Do you see?
Yes, the matrix harmonic module.
The harmonic module, yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so down the left side there, you see there are 20 seals. Those are the ones I was naming there. Dragon, wind, night, seed, serpent, world bridger. Actually, that's the hand, that next one, the star. So they gave them an energetic name is what came through for them. And then across the top are 13 tones, we would call them, which is kind of a particular type of each one. So going across, you would have all the dragons, if you will. The first seal is the dragon there, that red one up at the upper left, and the 13 tones of the dragon going across. And the way that this relates to us is this is actually encoded in our bodies, because what do we have 20 of? We have 20 digits. And remember I said that Lord Pakal had rings on all of his fingers and all of his toes. So actually each one of these relates to a digit, is part of the wisdom that came through. Also, the 13 relates to the joints, all the major joints in our body. And so literally each tone, each seal and each tone have an encoding in our bodies. And it's been fascinating to me as I've gotten into this. For example, I'll just call him out. I don't think he would mind, but Peter Melton, who's quite a figure with Unity Earth, his seal and tone is Overtone Warrior. And the particular finger that I've noticed he wears a ring on is the one that would relate to him. And I too have always been drawn to wear a ring on my right pinky finger, and come to find out that would be the one that I would want to be activating for the particular seal for the day that I was born. So we noticed too that there's a pattern that might remind you of a number of different things. We can see the human body. We can see kind of a butterfly pattern here as well. And these darker ones were channeled in as days of particular energy, extra energy. So. I haven't tried to teach this in quite some time, so I don't know if it's making too much sense yet to you. If you have questions,
I will have to review the video. In fact, I was thinking of asking you if you will put it up on your YouTube channel.
Yes.
because it's quite a comprehensive exposure you're doing there. So yeah, I mean, it's like a paradigm shifting. So when you can't unsettle someone that easily from the old paradigm into a new paradigm.
Right, right. It is very kind of disorienting, right? And yet you recognize that the way we've been brought up to think about time is very arbitrary and has no relation. And so there's a kind of hungering for something that's more that has resonance. And this is a cosmic wisdom. I mean, the understanding, I mean, how could the ancient Mayans have understood 26,000 year cycles or even a 52-year cycle of the double star of Sirius, that this was channeled for them as a telepathic culture, a culture that was in tune with these rhythms and patterns, as all the ancient cultures were. But they were just the hot spot on the planet. As I say, to me, it's fascinating. Honestly, I have not seen that written about, but to me, it just cannot be coincidence that this is precisely the area of the Earth that the asteroid struck for the beginning of the ice ages that did the age of the great reptiles in, and allowed for the primates to arise in consciousness.
To quote Viola from this morning, as you speak and go over this, the comprehensiveness of it makes one feel like there's truth in it, like we feel from inside of us. Viola said something to that effect this morning, like having a sense of truth. And so it goes beyond, like, my rational still has to grasp it all, but I sense a certain truth in there, and the wisdom and the capabilities of the ancient cultures, from the way they could position huge boulders with such precision in between the boulders, and yet we do not, I mean, laser precision. I mean, you'd say, and yet apparently they didn't have the use of laser back then.
Right.
So all this leads one to believe that at some point in the ancient past, these cultures or even civilizations had access or were connected to the source, or to something greater than we are right now. And as you say, we've probably been acculturated from our true self into the culture of the calendar and the clock.
Yes, yes. And how this...
When we actually need to clock in to the universe.
Yep, they're calling it telepathic attunement with the cosmos, our pathway to the stars. And what the point that they made about the end of the cycle, that, as I say, completed, at solstice in 2012, December solstice. Remember, the end of the world thing that was going to happen. That this was the end of the Baktun, the 5,125-year Baktun, and the even larger 26,000-year cycle. And what they're saying is the third dimension will be exhausted at this point, and we'll be moving into the fourth dimension, fourth and fifth dimensions. So this is where it's upon us to tune ourselves to bring our telepathic and intuitive abilities back into flow. And this business of clocks and calendars is really messing with our ability to do that. We need that attunement to the cosmos. So you're absolutely picking up exactly what I'm trying to to help us to get here, Viola.
Well, I had a comment about bees. I've been studying about bees because I grow flowers, and I always grow flowers that attract bees. And I'm taking this course. I always take all these courses, and it's all about bees. And so she explains very thoroughly about the body parts and how they work. Bees are such mathematicians and they're astronomers. And the point I was going to make about the bees is, they are very, in fact, the queen bee, it's like it's called, there's a movie out on the that the queen bee is she's called the queen of the sun or something like that, because the drones go up towards the sun, right, as high as they can go, and they know when. I mean, they've got a calendar, an internal calendar. They have all these dates and all these seasons and all of that. So they fly up high because what they want to do is attract the strongest queen, and only those that are strong enough to fly up high enough to reach up to where the drones are get fertilized. So then they come back. And now the other thing about the bees is that they know exactly how to build a hive for its maximum efficiency. And that would be in hexagonal pattern, and it's all compacted. And that way they keep their babies warm, and that way they conserve the energy, and also that they're using that hexagon and that thing with the triangle, so they're geometers, they're mathematicians, they're astronomers, and they know all this. I mean, if bees know it.
Right. Well, just wait. I'm gonna give you some more bee wisdom in this next, because I'm going right into some prayer practices. So I'll just give you this little teaser where I practice with the children every morning. We call it Honey Chapel, and and that's not just a cute name either. So more to come on that one. Wonderful. Well, okay. So I want to now share with you the last book that Jose Arguelles had published was this one. You Teilhardians will appreciate this, Manifesto for the Noosphere. And he's absolutely hats off to Teilhard. So I was going to tell you, so that matrix that I showed you, that 260-day matrix. So each one of us was born on one of those days. I was born on day 204. Tex was born on day 119. Teilhard was born on day 258, almost at the end of a cycle. And then he transitioned on day 207. And guess what I think it's that 21st, that day that was the close of the cycle, was 207. Yeah, I actually put that on the Teilhard page. I put it within some kind of a post. And I think it was what kept Therese from asking me to be an admin for a while. Actually, she accidentally, part of her chatter, was like, I don't know, Annie's got a little bit of a wild hair there. I don't know, So then she ended up inviting me later on. So, but she doesn't know where I'm coming from. I couldn't explain the whole thing, but I just noted that it was the same day on the Mayan Synchronometer that Teilhard had transitioned. No accident there, I'm absolutely sure. So in the flyleaf of this, the final Jose's final book, Manifesto for the Noosphere, the next stage in the evolution of human consciousness. The overleaf here is a recommendation by Barbara Marx Hubbard. And she says, Manifesto for the Noosphere is not only a work of genius, but a vital guide to making the shift from the biosphere to the noosphere, the next stage in the evolution of Earth consciousness. Jose Arguelles integrates the work of Teilhard de Chardin, Sri Aurobindo, and the Mayans with Russian scientists' cosmism, looking at issues of planetary and universal evolution as a function of the emergence of living, quote, living intellectual matter, synchronized by cosmic mind. This is a work of immense importance and encouragement for us all.
Wow.
And then I love Jose's dedication. This work is dedicated to the indigenous grandmothers and all indigenous elders who persist in their belief that the spirit of the earth will prevail and that we will unite once again within the sacred hoop beneath the flowering rainbow tree. How's that for bringing it all together?
Amazing.
So I wanted to read one other thing, and I was going to give you a couple of other synchronicities. This other little passage out of this book. So he says, the noosphere is a directed manifestation of a deeper wisdom that Earth is now ready to receive. And now this is a bit longer, continuing. In the spiritual dimension, consciousness undergoes a process of a descent into matter and then an ascent back towards spirit and unity. This directed cosmic intelligence conceives itself, becomes itself in its infinite array of possibilities, and then comes to a conscious realization of itself through its infinite manifestations, aka creation. Then, at a very specific point in its evolutionary trajectory, upon a planet capable of sustaining sentient life, the descent of this cosmic intelligence into matter results in a phenomenon known as the noosphere. From this perspective, the noosphere is a spiritually self-reflective medium of the original consciousness by which the universe was created, and a stage in the return of that original consciousness to itself.
My God, this is incredible. And you put all this together, Annie. You see, you're the catalyst. I mean, you connected with Tex, and then you connected with me. I mean, you brought us together, and then now Rita, you know, Tex brought her. I mean, it's like this convergence.
This room has been a convergence, ongoing. We're not done yet. So it's just so much bigger than any of us. It's just all about our intention, you know, just holding space for that.
And this thing with Teilhard being born on that, I mean, those numbers, I mean, you put all this together with well, what was the initial thing that kind of led you to this investigation? I mean, that's a spark. You know, you have a spark. And so wherever you land, you know, you set up a fire, you know, put us ablaze, you know, like Teilhard says. And so where did it start? I wonder.
Yeah, so what happened was I went to, so actually going back, and you'll appreciate this because you're studying with Cynthia Bourgeot now. So yeah, actually 2011, interesting. I really hadn't put that together. Forget Jose's transition day in 2011, but I'm going to call this in because I feel that Leticia is a big part of what's calling me. My oldest daughter is married to a man whose mother is an only child. He's an only child. She grew up without her father. She was born in Mexico, Leticia, and on the 15th of July in 2011, she took her life.
Oh.
And my my little granddaughters were 3 and 1, 3.5 and 1.5 when that happened. And precisely 1 week, that was a Friday morning, precisely 1 week later, I was to be in Albuquerque at Cynthia Bourgeau's breakout workshop on the meaning of Mary Magdalene.
Oh my
She
God.
was offering with Richard Rohr. And my friend Glenda that started this school with me, she and I were going to drive to Albuquerque, and she was going to mess around, do whatever, while I went to the conference. And that's just what we were going to do. And then this happened. And I said, I'm not gonna be able to go, you know. And then as you know, things kind of lined out for when the funeral would be and everything else, I said, well, you know what, why don't you just fly out there? I'll just fly out by myself and go to the conference. So that's what I did. And I'll just mention this because Tex knows I've been doing so much of this work, but the warm up to that conference was, you know, sometimes I'll have a pre-workshop, you know, kind of thing. So on that Friday was an introduction to gender reconciliation, you know, leading into the meaning of Mary Magdalene weekend, right? So if you're going to Albuquerque for, you know, something, you might as well go for the whole thing. So I did that and was completely so excited by the gender reconciliation work. That was my introduction to that. But did the conference, and of course, Cynthia just completely blessed me. And oh, thank you, Nola. Thank you for being here. Great. I hope we get to meet you at some point. During the conference, Cynthia mentions Nine Gates Mystery School and how she had brought some of this wisdom to that, and it had just been a real part of her development of all this. And so it kind of piqued my interest. And I didn't even realize that the conference was about a book she had written. But so, and of course they had already sold out of the books by the time I recognized it. So I came home, got a copy of the book, and I start reading the book. And even in the book, she's talking about Nine Gates Mystery School. Not tons, but you know, she mentions it. And when I reached that page where she mentioned it again in the book, I thought, okay, I got to find out about this thing. So I looked it up and just happened to have some tax return money or something that year. And I just thought an 18-day mystery school with Cynthia Bourgeau and who knows who else wonderful. I think I should do this. And because I was really searching. I had left the Catholic Church at that moment. So anyway, that's a long story to say that I went to Nine Gates Mystery School. And on my return, I was looking for someone in the community that had been to Nine Gates Mystery School. And the person that I found was Heather Neary, and she was here in Austin. She's not here now, but she was all into this. And so she introduced me to this wisdom and actually invited me to teach it a few years ago. And that's where I had these visual aids that I shared today. Took some screenshots of them. Of course, I got to do it in person. It's just so different to be, you know, physically doing it versus online, but I got to learn to do this. So that's how. And so it's just so, you know, when she first gave it to me, of course, she's not really a teacher, you know, per se. She's a therapist, actually a psychotherapist that's working this into her practice. And so I didn't understand this whole context that I just gave to y'all. But over time, I just more and more saw so many synchronicities. So I'll tell you, you know, I mean, we all wonder, you know, when someone dies on a particular day, what does it mean? You know, like you just want, it just seems like we're seeking synchronicity, you know, we're hardwired for that, to look for those those patterns, in our lives. And this, because it is numerical, it allows for so much of that. And so I'll give you, for example, my son-in-law Jason, who we've been enjoying his piano music and talking about his mother's transition. So his number is 58. His mother passed on 210. When you add those two numbers together, you get my daughter's number, my daughter Abby, who he married.
I wondered how they had met.
Well, I mean, they met, but it's just interesting. And you just see these different patterns like that show up, these different, my number is 204, as I say, and the first house that I lived in till I was almost 7 the address was 2004. And there's something, I mean, I think, children maybe can be sad leaving a house. There was something about that house. I was very sad that we were leaving that house. And I had a wonderful time, where we moved and had a great tree we had a terrible backyard in that first house that I'm talking about. But I was a 6-year-old child, and I remember distinctly knowing I had to somehow let go of that house. And I came up with, I'm going to put my hand by the front door and walk. I can keep my hand continuously on the wall and walk around my entire house back to the front door. And that will be my ritual to say goodbye to that house. Later on, when I received this, that, I'm 204 in the synchronometer, I recognized that there was something particular about that. My parents, very devout, the two of them together are 218. This is the last one I'll share with you. I could go on and on. Well, I'll tell you one other one after this one. So together, their two numbers make 218. 218 is actually the day that Pakal Votan's tomb was opened. It is also the day of my baptism, because I was born on a Sunday and I was baptized 2 weeks later, 14 days later. So 204 plus 14 on day 218. And my parents' faith, they were known in the community as the Rosary Romance, because they went to the church and prayed the rosary and regularly with the nuns. And my mom had just come into the Catholic Church, so she was just head over heels for everything Catholic. And we were raised in that kind of environment. And I was named for the patron saint Anne of the parish where they had met and prayed the rosary and got married. And so I just think it's really fascinating that my baptism day was their day together, 218, the two of their numbers together. And the final thing I have to say is that Tex and I first started communicating on day 190 back last October. Now 260 days ago, it's actually 262 days ago today. So we literally, and what happened was I reached out to him and asked him about his name and where if he'd ever been to Texas or he was from Texas. So that was on Monday. Before on Thursday, I did a presentation. So it was on the Co-Creators Convergence about Teilhard. So it was a 4-day span, 190 to 193. We are right now, my friends, in that same exact track, Tuesday through Friday, those 4 days this week.
Oh my God.
I mean, you just go, all right, I'm paying attention, I'm paying attention.
Well, it's good that she's paying attention. I mean, it's like I'm in the passenger seat. So if she's paying attention, we won't get into a wall or a tree, you know.
He keeps saying he doesn't have to pay attention.
No, but Viola, I was not really very, I mean, I've heard a little bit about Mayan and this sort of thing, but I'm very much, was very much current man, you know. Old Gregory, he did his calendar. I mean, that's the way we've been going about it, you know, so I trudge along. And now we have this one with all these things. So I'm asking myself, is it all serendipity or is it coincidences? Just, you know, we'll see where it goes. Yola, you're witnessing something here over these last 2-3 days. It's you're witnessing where we are and what is happening in the room. Like you're privileged, your witness, because you're seeing the evolution of the different activities in the room. Some people I knew and I reached out to them, like Eamon, Sawaf and Rowan this morning, you know, Jonathan from South Africa. I mean, like a few like that. And then there are others that just so seem to be fitting in. I mean, some we in a dynamic, as I said earlier on, with in a small group with Rita, with Annie, we are intentionally trying to presence of the Creator, of the Great Spirit, and intentionally and mindfully trying to be channels and instruments for the, you know, in the high interest of the common good. That disposition, and also wanting to, you know, try and live up to what they had envisaged, that if we find the power of love, it'll be like rediscovering fire. So there is a soulful love connection that we've been sort of trying to nurture, Annie and I, in the dynamic of evolutionary love. I mean, that great love that humanity is, humanity's salvation will require. What Christ has been telling us, what Gandhi, what every one of these great people have been trying to tell us. I mean, we need to have this love, you know. So we have to start somewhere. And as it's written, where two and more are gathered, and today we're 3. And to me, I like to think that if we only 2, there's 2 and more, and there's this openness to the Spirit. So that's the more. When we're 3, it's even better, because then it's not like, it's not me or her, and you know, like we have a third person that sort of brings a certain equilibrium. Because when you're only 2, I might say something, she may disagree, then you come in and you put a perspective and we find a happy medium. It's not me or her, nor you, it's what sounds the most reasonable. You see what I mean? But when you're only 2, like there's a tendency to be like, you know, one is a winner, the ones tend to be a loser. Like even if you're consciously trying to get into a dynamic of synergizing, to be in presence and all that, it's all like very good. But the human ego plays tricks on one sometimes. So it's good when there's more than just 2 in a conscious dynamic of engaging evolutionary love for collaborative solidarity, so that we can be instruments of the, you know, higher interest for the common good. I was happy to hear some of the work you've been doing. I say work because there's a certain dedication in what you're doing, Viola. and I'm going to look you up, and I hope we become friends on Facebook if we not, and I will check out the group that we have. I'm sure that even in Seychelles, I mean, I was like, after we finished with Rita and I went to make a sandwich there, and I was thinking, wow, I just quipped about this thing about the last time I saw her in Seychelles. Like I gave her a very cold bottle of water. Someone actually bought two, one for me and the other person had one. But when I saw Rita coming on the street, it was a very hot day. And I didn't have anything. I just offered her. I said, yeah, take it. I hadn't opened the bottle yet, you know. And then to hear her say that this session with us this morning, and maybe even my calling her 2 days ago, it's almost as if she had been walking in the desert, and we bring her some water.
Yeah, beautiful.
We may not have been many, but if we had the impact on one person, you see, one person who's trying to be an instrument in the life of a nation. It may be a nation of only 100,000, but it's a nation with a voice at the UN, a nation with a voice in the Commonwealth, a nation with a voice in the Organization of Francophone Countries, the Francophonie. So it is, you see what I mean? Like any community, your village is your village. So that's why we talk about from local to global, and from the personal. We cannot have a better humanity without better individuals. We cannot have better adults without better children. And the only one that can help to have better children is by the adults, like upping the game right now. As we need, you know, when EO asks Winnie the Pooh, Pooh, which day is it today? No, which day is it? And Pooh replied, it's today, my favorite day. So, it's today we have to do what we need to do. Anyway, very humbling. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, like, these last days, it's not so easy because I take it all very, very seriously. I've heard you last saying how, like, you feel emotional about it, and I appreciate that because it consoles me a little bit because I feel I'm being a bit emotional about this whole thing. But as I said to Annie afterwards yesterday, like, I've decided where I'm at, I'm going to allow my vulnerability to show up because I realize that just too many people are walking around with like in armors, yeah. I'm just being vulnerable, and if it helps someone else, and then we had our friend yesterday morning who seemed to appreciate that.
Mark appreciated that. Yeah.
That's it. So you never know when you let your humanness come through, how it helps someone else.
Someone else. We have someone coming in right now. Let's see what she's looking for. What's up next after I was going to yeah. Remember seeing Tara.
Hello, Tara. Yeah, welcome, Tara. I know she's been in the room